Dreams do come true. So kids, what's your dream?
What is new? So bright, colorful and new. Sometimes it feels hard, but you don't wanna give up.
Hello. Hi.
You can see my dream?
Of course, because I too had a dream. Some days I dreamt of becoming a tennis player and some days a cricketer. To make their dreams real tomorrow, you need financial planning today. Choose from a range of child plans from Aegis Federal Life Insurance and help your child dream big.
Hello and welcome to today's episode of Backstage with Boria, with somebody who has been there, done that for Australia, has been there, done that, been part of the Indian cricketing system as well, and someone who's an astute observer of our sport for a very long time. Welcome, Greg Chappell, to this special episode of Backstage with Boria as we set up the Border Gavaskar Trophy series. And it's a special occasion, 75 years of India-Australia rivalry. Thank you, Greg, for joining me. Yet another major series. Set it up for me. How do you look at it?
Hi, Boria. Nice to be with you. Yes, I'm looking forward to the series. I'm hoping that it's going to be a good and well-contested series. Unfortunately, there's been quite a bit of Test cricket this summer in Australia, which has been disappointing. West Indies and South Africa didn't quite step up, and Australia was able to dominate. But I don't think Australia will be dominating this series in India. I went on record on the weekend as saying that playing Test cricket in India is one of the big challenges, and it's like a chess match, really. The visiting team will have to be on its very, very best behaviour, very best form. We'll have to do everything right from day one if it is to challenge India at home.
What does it take for a visiting team to beat India in India? I mean, what needs to go right for Australia? Because we don't have Pant, we don't have Bumrah. So two-part question, how important are these two players? And secondly, what is it for a visiting team that they need to do to win in India against India?
They are two very important players, and I think, you throw in the recent injury to Jadeja, and Australia probably has its best chance for a long time of winning in India, but they'll have to do everything right. They'll have to play very good cricket for 5 days of 4 Test matches, and having sat in the Indian dressing room and watched the way the Indian players go about it, and having looked at visiting teams coming to India, it's quite a challenge. It's not just the cricket it's a challenge. India itself is confronting. The noise, the number of people, the weather, even though it's just coming out of winters, it's still a challenge to visiting teams. And the conditions in India just drain opposing teams. And by the 5th day of a Test match, if India is still in the contest on the 5th day, I back India to win every time, because they know they just have to keep doing the basic things really well. And it's a war of attrition for the visiting teams. The whole experience of India, even though a lot of the Australian players have spent a lot of time in India in recent years, the whole experience of India is still quite draining. And playing Test cricket in India is draining in the conditions, because you have to be on for every ball. You have to bowl well with the new ball. You have to bowl well in the middle overs. You have to reverse swing the old ball, and you've got to be good at both bowling and playing spin bowling. And for the fielders, the game, I don't expect the games will be high-scoring games. So they'll be closely fought, and that's quite draining for everybody. But the Indian team is more used to the conditions and can cope with it a lot better than the touring teams.
There is so much talk about whether the wickets will be ranked turners. Should India go in with turners? Should it be a more batting-friendly wicket? What's your take on this? I mean, because we saw what happened in the 2017-18 tour. Sitting in the outside, what is your take? I mean, should a team back its strength and go in with turners? What is your take? I mean, should a home side seek all advantage and go in with its strength and make a turner here, or would it be a relatively batting-friendly wicket that you think India should prefer?
Well, I don't think it'll be batting friendly, but I don't think it'll be ranked turners either. I think you take a huge risk when you seek to have, an underprepared wicket and a ranked turner. That I think evens up the contest, because one good innings can make the difference, and the host team can be on the losing side. I think you make the best possible wicket, but the choice of venues, I think, gives a pretty good indication that Rahul Dravid doesn't want fast, bouncy wickets for Australia to be able to roll out their fast bowlers, and also to suit the Australian batting style of growing up on bouncy wickets. I think they'll be slow and they'll be a little bit variable in bounce. They're the sort of wicket that most touring teams, even other subcontinental teams, really struggle to come to grips with in India, and because of the constant nagging of good spin bowlers, good spin bowler from both ends, some good quicks who can still get some use out of the up and down bounce on a slow wicket. You only have to go back, it only seems a short time, but when the West Indies were on top of the world, it didn't matter where they played their fast bowlers, and they had success everywhere. So I think the Australian fast bowlers will bowl well whatever the conditions are. But I think apart from Lyon, we don't have a proven spin bowler. India has two proven spin bowlers, and I think that will be the difference in the series. There will be some cheap runs for India, because whoever the second spinner is for Australia, they're not experienced. They're not experienced in Indian conditions, and they will bowl some loose balls. The Indians won't bowl many loose balls. So partnerships in any conditions, partnerships are very important. But in India, three good partnerships in an innings, and you've got a competitive score, whatever that score is for those conditions, whatever the par score is. Three good partnerships get you to a par score, and you're in the contest. And India will get partnerships. Australia must get partnerships, and they must stop India from building partnerships, and they must stop the Indian lower middle order from making runs. So being without Pant is a problem for India, a proven high scorer, fast scorer. But Kishal is an aggressive batsman, and India, I don't think, will be let down by him in the series. So the Indians will play well. Australia just have to be on their game from day one until the end of the series. And to play 4 test matches in as many weeks is demanding for any cricketer, but for a touring team in India, it's almost too much.
Greg, I was reading your comments on Virat over the weekend. Virat in form. I mean, he's back to form since the World T20. Obviously, the last 3 years haven't gone too well for him. How important is this for Virat Kohli, the batter? And how important is it for Australia to be able to stop Virat Kohli? If you were the coach at this point in time, what's the game plan against someone like Virat Kohli?
Well, the bowlers have to be on the top of their game. Virat is a good player, a very good player. He is back in form. I think he has a special place for Australia in his reckoning of Test cricket, and a special place for beating Australia. I think that's, he sees that as the biggest challenge in world cricket, and, he will want to do well. If I was sitting in the Australian dressing room, would definitely be talking about plans to stop him from scoring big scores, make it very hard for him to, get any momentum. So bowling well, setting good fields, is going to be very important. I think if Australia can stop Virat, they'll go a long way towards winning this series. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't other good batsmen in this Indian side. We know there are, and they've done well against Australia before. So that's, it's not the be-all and end-all, but I think Virat is the key. If he struggles to score runs, then Australia will be in the contest at every turn. If he makes runs, I think India wins the series comfortably.
And he, in many ways, if you see Virat, whether it's 2014, 2018, he's in many ways a very Australian kind of mindset. I mean, take it feisty, fight, passion, wearing his heart on his sleeve. So in that sense, he sort of sets it up. How important is Virat for Test match cricket? To get bums on seats, to get people to come and watch. He sort of sets it all up, being the character that he is.
Yeah, he's very important to Test cricket. I think we're getting to the stage where it's really the big three in Test cricket: India, England, Australia. They're the ones that have been playing Test cricket the longest, and therefore have the most history of Test cricket. And it's quite an expensive exercise to develop good cricketers and therefore to develop good teams, and particularly for long form cricket, and particularly for batting in long form cricket. It doesn't happen overnight, and you don't get somebody who just wakes up one day at 21 and decides they're going to be a good batsman. Being a good batsman starts almost in the womb. It's something that you absorb. You have to live it. You have to be passionate about batting. You have to be passionate about getting better at batting. And you have to be passionate about finding the right routines to be able to be on song regularly in Test cricket. It takes a lot of effort to make runs in Test cricket. These guys that bowl at the Test level, they're all good bowlers. Every team has 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, good bowlers. So there aren't many easy runs. You don't get too many ranked bad balls at that level. What the very best players do is they're able to score off the less than good balls that the good bowlers bowl. And, cricket is a game that really, when it's all boiled down, you're battling over a piece of turf that's about the size of your front doormat, maybe a bit smaller than your front doormat, to be honest. That danger zone, sort of 4 to 6 metres down the pitch, in line with the stumps, just outside off stump. That's the area that the bowlers want to dominate. As a batsman, you have to take them away from that area. If they stray to this end of it, then you must score runs. If they drop a little bit short to the bottom end of it, you must score runs. And if they're just a little bit wide, you must score runs. Because if you don't score off those, a good ball is coming and you'll get dismissed. The good players can almost dictate to the bowlers what they should bowl. They should bowl.
So you think Virat does that?
To bowl next.
Virat does that, what you just said, score runs of these 3 areas where he gets his opportunity, and that's what makes him special? That's
exactly what he does, and that's what makes him special, along with all the very best players through the history of the game, to be honest. That somebody's under pressure. In Test cricket, everybody's under pressure. The bowler's under pressure and the batsman's under pressure. But if you're a batsman and you let the bowler get away with his less than good balls, then the pressure starts to build on you and it becomes unbearable. And in the end, you make a mistake because you have to try and create something. Your job as a batsman, when I come in, I want to get the bowler away from that danger zone as quickly as I can. And I want to put the pressure on the other end. I want him to have the pressure, and that makes it easier for me to be able to score runs. And, I remember having a conversation many years ago with, over the years I've spoken to most of the good batsmen, but Brian Lara was very interesting to talk to about batting. And, I asked him why he thought he had made so many big scores. And he said because he could pick his moments. He could pick when a bowler was down, was not quite at his best, or he could pick that this bowler was one who wasn't quite up to it, wasn't perhaps quite ready for that level, and he could dominate them and he could get quick runs in a short space of time, and then he'd have a bit of a rest and then he'd go again. And I thought that was a very fascinating insight into the mind of one of the great batsmen of the modern era. You see a lot of other batsmen who don't do that. They're one-pace players. They never get that spurt on and get the so-called easy runs, a quick batch of runs, 40 or 50 runs in a short period of time. in the end, all batsmen run out of energy, and 99 times out of 100, they get themselves out by making a mental mistake. Lara was one that, could get the quick runs, but then he would have a little bit of a rest mentally as much as anything else and just stay down the non-strikers in, build his energy back up and go again. Not many batsmen can do that, and it's only the very best that really threaten the bowlers. And by being able to do that, you can dictate to the bowler what to bowl next. If they've strayed too full down this end of the danger zone and the batsman scores off it, only the very best bowlers are going to come back to that area next time. Most of them will try and correct their length and drop it a little bit shorter. Usually they overcorrect and they bowl a short ball, and the good player scores again, and then the pressure starts to build on the bowlers. So these are the sort of things that both teams have to do, but the Australians probably more so than India, because they'll be under the pump from day one.
It's Ravichandran Ashwin versus Steve Smith. I mean, this is a battle within a battle. How do you tackle somebody like a Ravi Ashwin in his own domain, where he knows what he needs to do? Can you set it up, a Marnus, Labhuschagne and a Steve Smith, good players of spin, against a Ravi Ashwin?
Yeah, I mean, it's very much what I've just described. They know where the danger zones are. They know where Ashwin will bowl. I mean, the one thing about playing in Test cricket, you know where the ball is going to be, because the good bowlers want to get it into the danger zone as often as they can. So it becomes your job as a batsman to find ways to get them away from that area, or be able to score off the ones that don't quite hit the main part of the danger zone. You can guarantee that Smith and Labhuschagne will have done their homework as well, and they will have spent a lot of time thinking about how to play Ashwin in Indian conditions, and they'll have their game plan. And if they're on their game, Ashwin will be, we'll have to work hard to get them out. But we've seen Ashwin for a long time. He's a very clever bowler. He mixes up his pace. Even though he's mixing up his pace, no two balls are ever the same, he's still hitting similar areas. And so the questions are always being asked. I mean, batting in Test cricket is like an examination. You're getting hard questions. The bowler wants to make the questions as hard as he possibly can, and you've got to find an answer, because your job is not only to survive but to make runs. So not only do you have to work out how you survive against someone like Ashwin, but how do you make runs against him? And how do you make him change his field? And this is what Smith and Labhuschagne will have worked out in their minds. And knowing them, they will have sat down and talked to each other about it. And how do we get him away from that area? How do we get him to change his field so that he can't be as aggressive? He can't have fielders in aggressive positions. Close in catching in India is also an art. And I think India does it better because they get more practice at it. They'll have 3, 4 or 5 fielders who are capable of fielding around the bat and fielding around the bat all day. Australia has Smith, who will be at slip. Labhuschagne, brilliant catcher that he is, he'll be around the bat. But there are others that haven't spent a lot of time under the helmet around the bat and probably aren't as gifted at catching as Smith and Labhuschagne and the Indian fielders. The Indian close-in fielders are worth 2 or 3 wickets in an innings. They're so agile, they're so clever. They almost move in with the bowler, even though they're fielding in close. So it's not only Ashwin that the Australians have to worry about. They have to worry about the close-in fielders. And so they'll have worked out in their mind the angles. One of the things, again, as a batsman, you need to have in your mind is the angles of this bowler, his rhythm. What is his rhythm? And Ashwin gets through an over very quickly, so you don't get much time to prepare mentally for someone like Ashwin. So to be able to have your routines is very important. And Smith and Labhuschagne will have their routines. They will be thinking about, okay, if he strays into this area, then I can play an aggressive shot, and that's going to dictate how long the Indians can keep their close fielders in position. So it's going to be fascinating to watch. I mean, we all know that Smith and Labhuschagne are very hyperactive sort of players. They're never still at the crease. They're always chatting if they're batting together. It'll be fascinating to watch how they go about it. And those two, I think, for Australia will have a big bearing on the outcome of the series, because if they can push Ashwin back a bit and the other Indian spinners, if they can score runs against them and not continually get dismissed by the Indian spinners, then the series becomes much more interesting.
Seen from outside, what is your impression of Subhman Gill? And if somebody is in this kind of form, is getting hundreds, would you have sort of gone in straight with him? Or is it that white ball cricket and red ball cricket fundamentally different, so you wouldn't judge white ball form to be an index for red ball form? Your thoughts on Subhman Gill?
Look, he's a very good player. There's no doubt about it. Anybody who plays for India has got some serious talent. They wouldn't have got that far if they didn't. But I agree with you. I think it's sometimes a little bit dangerous to extrapolate white ball form into red ball form. But the fact of the matter is that Gill has the ability to make runs at test level, and it'll be interesting to see how he goes about it. I would think that the Australians would consider him one of the weak links in the Indian side. Now that's very dangerous because, as I say, anyone who plays for India is a very, very good player and a very talented player. So a big part of it will be whether Subhman Gill thinks he's a good player. If he believes he's a good player and he thinks he's in good form and he can come out and bat with some confidence, then he'll do very well. But if he has any doubt, if he, doesn't matter what you think, what I think, it doesn't matter what a billion people in India think, whether he's good enough or not. What counts is whether he thinks he's good enough or not. And if he thinks he's good enough, he'll be fine. But if he has any doubt, then Test cricket will be too hard for him.
There's so much build up to this series. For India, World Test Championship final on the line. For Rohit Sharma and Rahul Dravid, perhaps the most important. We've not had the best record under them, but this series, and you make the World Test Championship final, there'll be a lot of positives. So if you were in Rahul Dravid's position, coach of India, what is the thought? I mean, this pressure that you keep talking about, this pressure that we will all put on this Indian team, how do you negotiate that? Is it in the mind? How important is it to win this mind game ahead of going out there onto the field?
It's very important because, there will be 11 players on both teams who are very gifted cricketers. Physical talent won't be the difference in this series. The mental talent and their mental skills will be the deciding factor in this series. And as far as Rahul and Sharma is concerned, they can't worry about the World Test Championship. It's really any series, any career, you have to learn to play it one ball at a time. The rest of the noise doesn't matter. You can't get caught up in that. And one thing, having spent time in India, is I know that the Indian players don't listen to that noise. It's hard to avoid it, and I'm sure there have been players that have listened to the noise and have probably fallen by the wayside because of it. But Sharma and Rahul will know that one ball at a time. If they go out and play good cricket, bowl good balls, build partnerships when they're batting, there's every chance they win this series, and they may win it comfortably. But if they get caught up with all the white noise that's going on around them, then they'll get into trouble. They're too experienced for that. They know what they've got to do. They won't, in the back of their mind, they'll know about the Test Championship. But this series will be what they're focused on. First Test match is what they're really focused on. Start the series well and then just keep the form going throughout. It's going to be fascinating to watch. I mean, it's why we love Test cricket. This is what Test cricket should be. Two really good teams. They both got their weak points. They both got their great strengths. Who can utilise all of their talent the best over the next month will win the series. And for Australia, it's a big ask. I do think they have a chance to win it. If they can play their very best cricket, no doubt they can win the series. But it is a big mountain to climb.
So who's Greg Chappell's money on? Are you making a prediction?
The easy thing is to say that India will win because they're playing at home. And I think, if I had to give you an answer, I'm not a betting man, so I won't be putting any money on it. But I would expect India to win the series. But obviously, I'm hoping that Australia can do the very, very difficult. Australia, in my time, has won 2 series in India and a long time apart. So I hope it's not quite so long before the next one.
Fantastic. I'll end there, Greg. Absolute pleasure talking to you. Hope to have you back sooner than later when we talk, maybe after the series and definitely leading into the World Cup. Pleasure. Thank you,
Thanks,
Greg, for talking to me. Thank you.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Now you can watch all our content on the RevSportz app. Please download the app. All the instructions are given, and consume all sports, multi-sports content on the RevSportz app. Also, you can download and use our other platforms. You can subscribe to YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and of course Twitter for the best of sports coverage from all over the world. So the app or all of the other social media platforms for consumption of RevSportz sports coverage. Keep watching.